everybody. I know it's a little bit later in the day than when I normally record videos, but I was off work today and I have to take care of some things later this evening, so I just figured I'd record one even though it's not a normal day for me to podcast. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and hit that like or subscribe button. If you don't like it, I really want to know. I want to know what everyone thinks. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when new videos go up. Again, just posting when I can record on commutes to and from places. Kind of had a wild hair idea the other day. Told you all on the last show that I didn't podcast for 2 days because I had a family member in the hospital, one of my kids. Long and short, nothing ended up coming of it, but it was a overnight stay and we got released late in the day, so it kind of messed up the day for everybody. But she's fine, happy, healthy. And the doctors found no concerns when she was there. She had a absence seizure is the best way to put it. She just kind of completely zoned out, unresponsive to sounds, being, tapped or having stuff put right in front of her face, and then she was a little out of it for quite a while afterward. Didn't know who her mother and I were, who her grandmother was. When she got home, she didn't know where we were, couldn't name any of her dogs, anything. So, took her to the hospital. They found nothing. Well, anyway, the reason why I told y'all that was to kind of get into the gist of what I want to talk about today. I want to talk a little about relationships. And the gist of today's topic is kind of what my wife and I saw in each other when we got together, how our relationship started, and what, in my opinion, makes for a healthy relationship. So, I'm going to have to take you back several years. My wife and I met around June or July of 2013. We had met, and we were actually co-workers. I had been working for an automotive dealership for about a year and a half at this point. I was working in the service side of things. I was a service advisor. She came in and interviewed with my manager and got a service advisor position at another building for the exact same dealership. They did big trucks and then small trucks and cars, and all the big trucks went over to a different building. So she comes in and interviews, and there was another coworker that I really liked that worked over at the other building as well. Gets the job, gets started. I ended up helping her through some of her franchise mandated training, as far as the knowledge that the franchise wants you to know before they'll certify you and say that you are a service advisor. Basic knowledge. Well, both of us were in let's just say, some lousy relationships at the time with other people. And they were in their death throes for sure. Well, I was going over to the same shop that she worked at on my lunch break quite a bit to get away from my normal co-workers that I was around, just to talk with another woman that worked there, far older than me. She was just a nice person to talk to. And this woman that had just started at the dealership's like, why you come over here all the time? I'm like, just have lunch with Diane. Her and I enjoy talking. We've been co-workers for a number of years, and I just don't get to see her unless I come over here due to the way that the shops were laid out. So she's like, well, I'll go out to lunch with you. So one day we went out to lunch and got to know each other a little better. Just talked. She talked about her past relationship. She was divorced at the time and was seeing she had just moved back from out of state. Because of that, she was seeing someone, and it just wasn't a healthy relationship. Mine wasn't a healthy relationship. Long and short, both of us were underappreciated in our current relationships, and it took a complete stranger basically to point out that, hey, you're stupid for staying with this person. Well, the relationships ended up dying shortly after that, and we both found ourselves single with no one to really hang out with as a significant other. So, well, you're fun to visit with. You're fun to visit with over lunch, so let's visit outside of lunch. So she was a single mother, had 3 amazing kids. She had a nice house that she was renting just outside of town, nice quiet little neighborhood. And several nights a week after work, I would end up going over there. I've always had some sort of a side job. I cut grass in the summertime, and I have for more years than I would care to admit. So I'd go over to her house after I got done cutting grass, hang out. She would always cook dinner or have something ready. And this is after working 8-9 hours a day, picking her kids up from daycare, and then she'd help them with homework. And then once she got them to bed, we'd visit for a little bit, watch a little TV, and I'd go home. Well, we got talking quite a bit about, if this works, what are long-term expectations like? And there was a lot of talk about whether or not I could, be in a long-term relationship with someone that had kids from a previous marriage. And I'm like, well, it's not something I thought about before. Years prior to this, I had been involved with a woman that had kids from a previous marriage. And they had some trauma issues from the divorce and the split and when things got ugly between their parents. And it didn't take me long to realize that, in my opinion, well, I better not say it. It didn't take me long to realize that at the age that I was at, it was not for me. But this was several years later. I had done a lot of growing up. I had got my own place and was, kind of taking care of business. So I'm like, well, I think I can. I mean, I like hanging out with you and the kids. We have fun. We had gone and done things together with the kids when both of us had a day off that lined up, and she wasn't dead tired, or the kids didn't have school in the morning, so it was a lot of fun hanging out with her and the kids. But the gist of where this whole idea is going is we did not get anything typical out of what you would consider a fairy tale relationship. One of our first big dates that we went on, this was, I think, about a week and a half after I had broke up with my ex, and that went fantastically bad. Half her family still hates my guts. What's funny, the other half of her family actually likes me more than they like her. I get invited to birthday parties and dinners and whatnot. They say that they traded up. But anyway, the previous week to this, right after my ex and I broke up, I ended up taking a trip to Indianapolis. At the time I had my CDL. Some friends of mine had got a bus and they needed to go to Indianapolis. I knew how to drive it, legally could. Let's go. Jump in the bus. We do what we're doing up there, go to turn around, and the bus is broke. And it is the weekend of the Indianapolis 500. All the dealerships and part warehouses up there closing early. It's a very simple fix that no one can get parts for, because everyone wants to go watch the Indianapolis 500. So we end up going to Enterprise Rent-A-Car at the Indianapolis airport, renting the last 3 vehicles that they had and driving home. Well, the next weekend, the bus is fixed. I'm like, hey, if you can make arrangements to pay, I can get up there and get it picked up on my day off. So I was going to invite a buddy of mine to ride along with me and drive my car back. Called her kids were staying with a grandparent that weekend, so she could have a little time off. I'm like, hey, you want to ride up to Indianapolis with me? Sure. So the whole way up there, and I didn't know exactly where I was going. We got slightly turned around once. I think we just ended up getting off like 1 or 2 exits too early. But we were in the car for a solid 3.5 hours going to Indianapolis. And we're talking about everything, and each of us are getting caught up on basically the things that went on in our life from like 10 to present day. And she had a lot of bad history, we'll just say that. The kids had a lot of bad history. So her and I talk about all these things, and we would end up sitting out on her porch at night after dinner, just staring at the stars, talking. Well, her financial situation, due to a couple things, ended up changing very rapidly for the worst. The house that I had at the time had more rooms than I needed by a lot. So I was able to move her and her kids in, and they had their own floor of the house. During that time, I'm trying to think, since her and I have been together, like, we hadn't been dating very long at all at this point. I don't even know if we were officially dating, but we've been, hanging out quite a bit. One time she drank an entire pot of coffee at work by herself, and then proceeded to have a heart event. So dropped her kids off at her grandparents' house, and then went to the hospital to stay with her, figured out what was going on. Before we got engaged, one of the kids had accidentally swallowed a magnet or two, and the again, straight to the hospital. An overnight stay for her, I think. It would have been even a 2-night due to how late in the day it was. One time my wife and I got to having a tickle fight, and she tickled me and then jumped, and I tried to move and block her, and she ended up banging her arm on a door jamb, thought she fractured it. Another hospital visit. I got injured one time. I'll be considering what I was doing. Cutting grass on the lawnmower. Hospital visit. She came down with Lyme disease a couple years back and had almost a week stay in the hospital, I think, because she lost function in both her legs from the knees down and feeling. And she partially had to learn how to relearn how to walk due to losing the function in her legs to begin with. Had a kid with appendicitis, had another kid just last week with a seizure. And we've dealt with all sorts of other issues together. She's got a lot of past trauma, has been officially diagnosed with PTSD, has a service dog, she has heart issues that have been an issue since her and I have been together at varying levels. We've got one kid that's on the easy side of the autism spectrum. Don't pull out in front of me, please. Sensory processing disorder. Can't handle loud noises, light touches. Everything in her room is in exactly the spot that she deems it necessary, and if one of her siblings moves it, it's a big deal. And don't dare change plans for that kid. We've got another kid that is currently in the... I'm trying to figure out how to word it. That isn't growing. She is in one of the bottom in the bottom percentiles for height for her age, and her bone and her growth plates are beginning to fuse. The doctors are working on whether or not they can do anything to get a growth spurt out of her before her growth plates completely fuse. Don't know what's going to happen with that. They had to do some blood labs the other week. Waiting to hear back. But anyway, the gist of this discussion, and I'm telling you kind of the lowlights of a relationship that's gone on for 6.5, nearly 7 years. Is that there's a lot of stress and heartache in a normal relationship. The Hollywood relationship is nothing but a lie. And I know that a lot of people know that, but I'm kind of telling my relationship tales simply to reaffirm that. It's frustrating to me, the way that relationships are portrayed in movies and TV, even for kids. Now, I said all that, but my wife and I have had some amazingly fun times together. There was one Saturday or Sunday we were planning on going to someone's place for a visit, and I ended up getting a little sick. I just broke a fever, didn't want to go get anybody else sick. So we ended up just driving around for quite a few hours just looking at some of the different scenery and different places that we hadn't been before in the area that we live. We've taken several amazing vacations together as a family. We've even taken a few couples getaways where grandparents will watch the kids for a set amount of time, and we'll go off someplace that we want to go and just kind of do our thing for a couple days. We built a house together. I was working 60 hours a week at the time, so I didn't do much hammer swinging, but we had built a house together, had a contractor do it, and my wife actually went over there because the contractor's a friend of ours, and put in some floors, and we painted and picked out a lot of stuff together. We bought a couple cars together. We've been happily married for 5 years, going on 6, and together for nearly 7 years. We've been there for each other, so I mean it's a fantastic relationship, but just life circumstances do happen. So that was kind of the gist of this discussion. Even when you have someone that is amazingly good to you, don't get upset because it doesn't turn out like Disney or Hollywood says it should. That is a very normal thing. So anyway, I guess that's about all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in for another cruise with Smooth. Hope everyone has a great evening and stay safe out there.